Going to squeeze this call in because there's a lot of meat on this particular bone. So I made mention that it's in the news about the Stephenville airport, and it's not encouraging news, to say the very least. We'll get the thoughts of the Mayor of Stephenville, Tom Rose, after this. So now the airport designated as a registered aerodrome. For the time being, anyway. There's some comments coming from Carl Diamond, of course, the man at the helm of the Diamond Group of Companies, that it's simply about some poorly painted runways or taxiways, and that can be rectified and get them back on track. But, of course, minimal services available at the Stephenville airport, and it's quite a long time ago where the announcement was really catching the attention of people in the Bay St. George region and right across the province. September the 9th of 2021, all the plans and the hundreds of millions of dollars and the thousands of jobs and the big Hercules aircraft-sized drones, cargo drones, and all the rest hasn't come to pass. There's lots of money outstanding, let alone the fact that Mr. Diamond did indeed buy the airport for very, very little, $6.90, paid off $1 million in liabilities, but there's still lots of money owed, and still, of course, to state the blatantly obvious, a lot of work to be done to achieve even a portion of what was pledged back in 2021. Let's take a break for the news. When we come back, Stephenville Mayor Tom Rose in the queue, and then you. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5 and say good morning to the mayor of the town of Stephenville. That's Tom Rose. Mayor Rose, you're on the air.
Hey, Mr. Paddy Daly, thanks for having me on.
Happy to have you on the program. So there's some talk in this news story that's out there this morning that Carl Diamond has promised to repay or to pay off that $500,000 that's outstanding. Remind the folks what that is and what the status of it is, because you said that there's still a plan for that to take place.
Yeah, so basically, I've been looking at the news media. There was a court appearance, I believe, on Wednesday with a creditor that has a lien on Mr. Diamond on the lighting project primarily. But although we can't discuss exactly what the price points are on the taxes, and anybody can go into the MAYER assessment and see what the property tax would be on an airport or any business or any house in this province. But we had started to negotiate money or a grant in lieu of taxes, but that hasn't materialized, and I guess the reason is there's been cash flow and capital problems with Mr. Diamond, and as you well know, in the last year and a half, the big one that was on the list with Transport Canada for compliance was they had to get the line painting completed, because the last time it was done by the Stephenville Airport Corporation, it wasn't done properly, and it was flagged by Transport Canada as an improper component of work that was done. But he hadn't had the capital to do it, and it is concerning. The airport in Stephenville is so important to us as a town. We have the Marine Institute's fire training facility with MUN in Stephenville, a lot of jobs. We've got the Canadian Coast Guard with a hangar at the airport. We got NAV Canada with the weather contract. So there's a lot of jobs. So as a council, and I'm sure any business person or citizen in the town, we're really concerned that Mr. Diamond can't get the capital to hold on to the corporation. And I guess there's been a continuance that he's got till May 1st now because of the lien on the lighting project. But it is tough for us.
Is there any reason to believe that he's going to be able to not only cover the $500,000, but to even come anywhere remotely close to some of the pledges made back in 2021? Because I don't necessarily know Carl Diamond. I did meet with him one time to ask some questions, but here we are all these years later, and really, literally, almost nothing has come to pass. So are you still holding out hope, or are we thinking that it's time to go back to the drawing board and see if there's another operator willing to take on the operations and actually do something with it?
Well, there's no doubt, Patty. Hope is fading on that file because we haven't had the deliveries or any components of what Mr. Diamond had planned. And it's getting to the point now that when you have a lien on you and you're in the courts might say, do you have control of this corporation? It may be another investor that's going to come in with a new plan because, as you well know, ports and airports, Patty, they're what I refer to, they're called sustainable infrastructure facilities that exist in many communities, cities across this great country. And when we look back at the deregulation of airports and how a lot of airports became privatized, Stephenville was subsidized by the federal government $1.6 million a year to keep the airport going. And then here we are in a province, no railroad. We live on an island. I think one of the things, and we got municipal elections, provincial elections, federal elections. We don't have a good air policy in this province. So if I were the government, I'm just going to say this because it would help Stephenville and every airport in this province, I would go out there with a new air policy, expression of interest to an airline, but the airlines must provide a basic level of service, affordable pricing points to all of our 7 airports in this great province of Newfoundland and Labrador. And if they do that, then government would give them the business. And it was something similar done years ago with Air Atlantic. Remember when Air Atlantic was based with their operations in Gander? Government supported Air Atlantic because they were provincially owned airports. So we need to do something with air transportation in this province. And as a municipality, we're not allowed to own the airport. We're allowed to give grants. And up till 2023, we were still giving about $400,000 or $500,000 to the airport to keep the lights on, keep the payroll going, because they were in bankruptcy protection. There was nobody coming in, no federal funding. There was no provincial funding. There was nothing that sustained. The airlines weren't coming in. So we were in really, really rough shape. And, I heard some of the comments from past Lenny Tiller. And I got to make a quick comment here because he basically said, well, I resigned because of toxicity, a toxic environment. Well, sometimes toxicity is from within. And the other thing is, and all the public meeting minutes, on the end, the Stephenville Airport Corporation, in order for me to give a $50,000 grant to keep the airport going, I needed 5 votes. He wasn't supporting to keep the airport corporation going. Now he's saying he's not supporting Carl Diamond. So obviously, if he didn't support the community airport, don't support Carl Diamond, is he really supporting the airport? So, his messaging is not accurate, and I just had to make a correction there.
And fair enough, I'll leave it up to Mr. Tiller, who did send me an email this morning to speak to it of his own accord. Is there any way to go back to the beginning and see this airport under the control of someone other than the Diamond Group? Because at this point in time, there's no reason to believe there's going to be any forward momentum. So is there anything in the contract about timeline for, bringing some of the drone program to play, or any sort of he was talking about, attracting passenger travel back to the airport to a greater degree? Is there anything the contract says time is up, we're moving on from Carl Diamond, here's your $6.90, and we're taking the airport back and off we go?
Yeah, so I was a liaison on the board when the board made the decision. And, and very quickly too, Patty, the board was at a point they were ready to close the airport because they had no hope, and that's where we were at that point in time. But in the agreement, it clearly said that the ownership would retain with Mr. Diamond if the airport continued as a commercially viable airport. Now, with Transport Canada, with the NOTAM, with the line painting, sometimes there could be a 90-day period that they're going to give you. So here we are in March. You can't paint lines on a runway till May. And if the lines get painted, you get reinstated with Transport Canada, from what I understand. And I have an aviation background also. But if we had to go back to a community-run airport again, that would take support from the provincial government. I would say you would have to run a plebiscite in this town, because on the end, the challenge we were having on council is a lot of people were saying, we're putting money in the airport where we still got to drive the Deer Lake to fly. So you can understand their frustration with council every time we gave $300,000-$400,000 a year to the airport to keep it going. And I go back to saying that even on a federal level, I just like to say this because I watch the economics of transportation so closely. So here we are, we're a natural resource country, very rural. In Canada, all the airports, within 150 miles of the 49th parallel, that's where most of Canada lives. But we're a resource extraction country. But yet we have no regulatory conditions in place on transportation with airports that guarantees air service to remote areas, because no remote areas, that's where mines exist. That's where a nurse may have to live or a doctor. But if you don't have affordable, basic level of transportation, it actually has a negative impact on your country's economics. And you look at Newfoundland and Labrador, Patty. I would love to go to Labrador on holidays, but it's very pricey, $1,800 to go to Labrador to see one of the greatest parks in the world. So I think the provincial government and the federal government got to really wrestle down, because deregulation of airlines have helped the big city centers, but it has really hurt. And you look at Atlantic Canada, Yarmouth, no commercial service, Bathurst, Charlotte, Stephenville, and you look at what Gander had 40 years ago, 50 years ago, or what St. Anthony had. A lot more service than today. So right now in this province, we got St. John's and Deer Lake, and then there's 100,000 passengers that fly in and out of Deer Lake from Virgil, Port aux Basques, and Stephenville. So it really hurts, right?
It does. Something has to give here. The airport can be an important cog in the economic wheel of the Bay St. George region, and at this moment in time, it's just not, and no reason to believe it's going to be under the current ownership. I appreciate the time, Mayor. We're off to the break.
Okay, thanks for having me, Patty.
No problem. Take care. Bye-bye. That's Tom Rose, the Mayor of Stephenville.